and you can bring me to my knees. All this time that I can beg you, please, babe. All the times that I've cried, my intentions full of pride, and I feel tomorrow will be okay. Hello, everyone else. Alarm just went off. Whoopsie. This is Michael Burhan here doing another live stream, and we are talking political correctness. Political correctness basically is when people are forced to go with a certain narrative, depending what your narrative is. And I want to talk about it a little bit because there has been a big situation that kind of dropped, because I was talking about very different scenarios and situations and bits and pieces that were going on in the media. But this dropped yesterday, and I had this discussion with, of course, another YouTube creator, Mr. Dave Wade, and I also have this discussion with my best friend in regards to how she perceives the situation. Because the problem is, when you're looking at stuff that's political correctness, you have to look from a few different sides of the spectrum. One, you've got to look at a company's PR side, and two, you have to also look at the argument that the person is making. So whether or not that argument may be flawed is different to compared to like anything that people say, you, I, or anyone else. For those who don't know, there's a gentleman by the name of James Damore. He worked for Google. He was a Google engineer, so there is a possibility that we could have this video taken down by YouTube, depending on how they feel about it. But I don't think that's going to happen. Now, he dropped something which was more of a manifesto than anything else. Oh, and by the way, guys, contribute, leave comments below, let me know exactly how you feel about the situation, because without you there is no me, without me there is no you. It's not the golden mic of doom. Well, it is the golden mic of doom. I've just covered it. It's got like a penis with a condom. It's covered. But yeah, so basically this gentleman released his little manifesto, and he was talking pretty much, and hello Heather, and he was talking about exactly his stance on stuff like, they call it, I think the word would be positive segregation, in a sense, where businesses will hire their practices, they'll have their hiring practices based on gender, or so you stole Terry Wogan's mic. Yes, I did, Dewey. I stole Terry Wogan's mic. So yeah, you basically have an issue where their hiring practices are based more on gender and affirmative action, instead of basically hiring people based on their merit. Now, as someone who believes in equality, I believe in equality entirely. I always believe that the best person for a job should be hired, but I also think that people should not focus on things like color or gender or whatever. If there is a job and there are applicants that have gone for that job, so say like for me as an actor, currently I look like a mess, but if I go for an acting job and I'm auditioning for that job, I want to be auditioned and basically looked at based on my characteristics and what I can do in terms of that job. I don't want someone to look at me and go, well, he looks Arab, so of course we've got affirmative action hiring policies, let's just hire him. Because for me, that doesn't make me feel like I earned it. And that's pretty much the simple factor on this. And he kind of brings that up when he makes his argument in, like, firstly, in his document. This is a long document. A lot of people are just like, well, it's just a written statement. It's not. It's a manifesto in terms of the way that he's written it. Because he wants to bring to light something, and he wants to put it out there in order to basically gauge opinions and create conversation. But at the same time, I felt like he had kind of his own means to do it. There was an agenda here. And if people say there wasn't an agenda, you're fucking insane. There was an agenda. So he talks about this, and I agree with him 110%. But then he starts using that kind of solid argument and that basis, and this is where he kind of lost me in a sense. He started attacking, and he did attack, kind of women in terms of the workplace. So he's like comparing women to men, and how women are more emotional than men, and men are more logical. I'm a man. I can guarantee you that I am one of the most emotional people out there. Look, Pepsi. Hello, Pepsi. I'm one of the most emotional people out there. So as far as I'm concerned, that fucking debunks that. in terms of that situation, that kind of bugged me a little bit because he's trying to put all this off as scientific fact. Okay, and you know he apparently has a PhD in biology. By the way, that PhD he actually took off his LinkedIn profile and has removed it on any kind of applications. I don't know why. I don't know if he actually has this or it was being used in some form of fashion, but I would take that with a pinch of salt. So he's comparing men and women and saying that women, you know, have certain characteristics that distinguish them from men and men from women. When you try and make that argument with me or make it with anybody, you lose me. And you lose me because that in itself is segregation. So you're trying to make a term saying that you shouldn't have positive segregation in the workplace, but then try and make another argument saying that men are better than women. And that's what he did. Now, this thing was leaked and the internet exploded, right? Everybody went fucking insane. And I love the internet for everything it can give you, but I also hate the internet for everything that it does in some ways. Social justice warriors, and I've said this, you know, I agree with you, Heather, neither are better. One is kind of, it's like one is the devil that you have to have in order to get some sort of semblance of equality, and then the other is just basic hating on someone. It's like when you call all women feminists because they won't sleep with you. It's a very negative kind of connotation. And speaking of the internet, they continuously ripped this guy apart. Was it warranted? If you read the document, you would sit there and go, actually, it's a cause for debate. And I like debate. I like to debate with people. I love mass debates. Yes, you got that one. Where people like myself can sit down and we can have a conversation, because a conversation and communication always works. I don't agree with the far left and I don't agree with the far right, where we need to censor people. Seems to me if you remove that type of thing from a profile, you never really had it to begin with. Somebody is getting ready to revoke. Exactly. Now, the SJWs went insane. They basically went after the guy. People saying they want to punch him in the face. Don't punch someone in the face with an opinion, even though, I will say, you are warranted to freedom of speech. That is granted. But you also have to deal with the consequences that come from that. So if you're going around spreading hate against a certain gender or a certain class of people and you get punched in the face, well, that happens. It comes with freedom of speech. It's like, I'm free to call people a cunt, but if I get a black eye over it, then, you know, that's what happens. Now, this situation kind of escalated where he was then looked into by Google, because they were basically, they did a PR move. Their PR move was to talk about how they value free speech, but then they fired him. And I agree with the firing. James here, the guy kind of, I've told so many people, say, well, it's my Facebook wall, so you can't argue. Yeah, but the thing is, you can argue against an opinion, just don't argue or insult people's mums. That's what you need to not do, unless you're a stand-up comedian like myself, because I do it a lot. But you've got this situation, you've got this thing that's happening. He's been fired. He wants to take legal action against Google, which, truthfully, I don't think it's warranted. I don't feel that he has a leg to stand on in terms of this, because, again, these are the consequences of having freedom of speech. And, as per se, he did violate work policy. The company has their own policies in place, policies that you would have to adhere to anyway, in terms of any company you work for. If I basically took a job, I was working for, say, Sainsbury's or Walmart or any company, if you put something on the fucking internet, you've opened a door that others opinions. Agreed. And I basically started working for a company, or I was working on a big movie. We'll say that. I was working on a big movie. And I was working with Scarlett Johansson, and I sat there and I made an Instagram post or a Facebook post talking about Scarlett Johansson's posterior and how I wanted to hammer that. She may not take that as a joke, and I might get fired because I'm not the same name value as her. Did I deserve to get fired? Yes. Because there's a code of conduct I must follow while being on set. You are granted opportunities sometimes in order to progress. You have to follow a certain code of conduct with people that you meet, with companies, with films that you're shooting. And that's fine. I think as people, we kind of take that for granted and we keep saying freedom of speech, freedom of speech. You've been given the freedom of speech. You've been given the right to say whatever the fuck you want, but at the same time, the consequences are there. And if you violate company policy, then you have to deal with those consequences. Now, a lot of people are going to the far left, and I want to call someone out here. Mundane Matt. I like some of his videos. I think that he's very intelligent in the way that he basically speaks, and also the way that he deals with certain things. But at the same time, I feel that his problem, and the problem with a lot of people, is they're trying to matire the guy. You know, James Damore, they're like, oh, he's a matire. You know, he was trying to get conversation started, and they were destroying his free speech, and all blah, 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 blah. And then they start using their arguments to target the left. And this is the problem. I've had this problem. I have the freedom of speech to call you anything I want to. You have the right to ban me for it. Ta-da. Exactly. And that's kind of the problem when it comes to society in general, is when someone tries to make an argument, they will use something or somebody, even if it's loose argument. This is what Anita does, and this is why I really got annoyed with Matt on this. Anita takes small, even like the smallest things, and tries to make a big argument for it. So she, like, for instance, she'll skew an opinion, she'll skew a narrative in order to fulfill her agenda. Matt did the same thing. He basically, on his video, talked about how this was a move for the left, and the left are taking over everything, and the left are the reason why Google fired him. No, Google fired him because he basically used his right for freedom of speech, and he basically violated companies' terms to their agreement. The one thing I will do, and I did talk to my best friend about this, she's a PR person, and she was talking to me about the best way they could have handled it. Google should have debunked his theories in his paper first. They should have debunked it and also released a copy of their regulations. They're basically detailing exactly what you can and can't do, and explain how he violated those. Boom. You've taken him down a peg, so that makes his argument less proven. So you disprove the argument altogether. And two, you basically, as a company, show that this is the reason why you have to take the steps that you need to take. We all need to be justified here. You know, our actions have to be justified. If you make a move and you fire someone from a movie, you can't do it because I gave in to peer pressure. The moment you do that is the moment you make yourselves look weak. In order to basically have a subjective opinion, and in order to explain to people intellectually where you're at, you have to debunk arguments before basically going into a situation where you have to take a course of action, because you need to explain yourself, especially as a company that makes billions of dollars like Google. During the election, I would debate with anyone until they desired. I needed to be called names. Then I realized that the IQ of a shoe. Yeah, and I agree with you, Heather. I had the same issue where I was talking to people and explaining to my stance, because calling names makes you look dumb, and it does. And I agree. I used to do that, and pull people apart. And then I realized that my argument had no weight to it if I did that. So I decided to debunk people and use evidence, clear-cut evidence. Because once you have clear-cut evidence, then you have a basis for a clear argument and a clear defense on your part if anything goes awry. And that's kind of where we're at the moment. You know, you've got the internet basically trying to push one agenda, the narrative of, you know, feminism and social justice is destroying our kind. Then you've got the other side of the spectrum, the far right, the far left, who are sitting there going, well, they had the right to do it. And regardless of whose side I'm on Google's side when it comes to this situation. And the reason is, James arrogantly did this. He knew exactly what the company's policies were. He's an intelligent guy, regardless if he has a biology PhD or not. He's an intelligent guy. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew exactly that he was going to be blackballed for his offensive kind of handling of the situation. And it was offensive. He tried to use one theory to kind of paint a narrative and also fulfill an agenda. Now, in regards to his situation, if he wants another job, WikiLeaks want to hire him. They've expressed that they want to hire him, and that they basically talked about the whole freedom of speech thing and saying, well, Google are censoring him by doing this. It does look like that right now because they never took the necessary steps. You know, when you censor someone, you censor the art of communication. And I think with you, me, and everybody, communication is key, especially when you're on YouTube. You know, and that's the kind of the biggest thing. Like when I was doing the Angry Joe videos, I've had people call me a commie. I've had people say I'm jealous of him. I've had people saying that it's the art of competition and I'm doing what I'm doing to compete with Angry Joe. I'm not doing any of this to compete with anybody or their mum. You know, it happens in a certain way because I will need to comment on stuff because people ask me to comment on it, and that's all I've ever done. And I think the fact that they're stating that, they have the right to that opinion, and I have the right to debunk those opinions and explain my own self and my narrative and the reason why I have no agenda here. And it's the same with this situation. I have no agenda. I think this is truthfully a foolish individual attempting to raise his profile by speaking out on something in such a way so that he can force a narrative through. And this happens with a lot of people, like Milo Yiannopoulos does it, Nita Sarkeesian does it. People keep going on about the far left and the far right and how they're so different. They're not, because they use the same tactics in order to get their viewpoints across. Like if you're far left and you want to basically get a viewpoint across, you want to make an argument, but you don't want anybody else to have an opinion on that, because once they have an argument that holds weight, you want to censor them. The same goes for the far right. I'm very much middle ground, but I do listen to opinions from the right and the left as well. And the right has points at times. The left has points at times. But you have to be open to have a conversation. And once you sort of censor that conversation, say like you're on YouTube, my video gets taken down, like this video gets taken down, and then I end up in a situation where my channel gets banned, they are effectively censoring the conversation. If by Google doing what they did, they effectively censored the conversation and inexplicably matired James Damore. And it sort of ended up middle ground, exactly. It ends up in a situation where no one's winning here. And the reason why no one's winning is James thinks he can take this to court. No matter how right you think you are, right? Google are a multi-billion-dollar company. If they want to, they can leave you in court for the rest of your freaking life. And you may not have access to anything. And I doubt he has the funds and the access, even if he has Julian Assange, the head of WikiLeaks, backing him in any way, shape or form. There is no way that he can kind of get out of this situation unscathed. And the same goes for Google themselves. And to the idiots going out there trying to raise funds for him to have a court case and sue the company, it's frivolous. And the lawsuit itself would be frivolous because he's under certain terms and conditions of his own contract. You sign a contract, and I don't understand. I don't know if a lot of people do this, where they sign contracts and go, hey, let me sign this contract, and then I can do X, Y, and Z. Because it doesn't work that way. Because you end up signing a contract or an agreement with a company, you are bound by those terms. If those terms don't meet certain like government standards, then you could probably bring it up and say, hey, let's bring it up to a government watchdog and get them to look into it. You can't speak out about it once you've signed that contract, and you are bound. And most people are also bound by, I believe there's an embargo under those TNCs anyway, where you're not allowed to basically speak about what's happening internally in the company, which he could be liable for a lawsuit for that. These are the terms when you're working with someone. And I know a lot of people will sit there and go, but he was wrongly fired and all this and that. And I get it. I really do get it. And I do understand where everybody is coming from and where everyone has a dog in this fight. But at the same time, I wouldn't say, hey, let's, you know, throw him out there and make him the spokesperson for every white male who's been downtrodden and, you know, stepped on. And there are bigger things out there. And in terms of this situation, I think for both parties, it would be fair if they basically just swept this under the rug and got rid of it. In terms of the discussion and the points he made, he has some valid points. I think when it comes to gender, when it comes to age, when it comes to anything else, non-disclosure terms are a bitch to get around. Exactly, Dewey. When anybody is bound by an agreement, depending if it's basically any role within a company, you want to make sure that you are hired as the best person for the job. So if I basically am hired based on my skin color, that doesn't make me feel great as a person, right? Because it means I'm only receiving a paycheck for what I look like. And I find that that's kind of an issue in Hollywood as well, where a lot of people don't get cast for roles based on the role themselves. They get cast because they're pretty or because they carry some weight in terms of movies. And that leaves roles rather limited. I'm never going to be a leading man. and a lot of that is because of what Hollywood dictates. I might be a comedic leading man for a very low budget, love comedy where I eventually get the girl, despite being a stupid idiot for the most of the movie and doing everything wrong. I might get those. I might be able to get like one of those Seth Rogen leads. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not going to be the guy who's the handsome lead in this movie. And also the fact of because of who I am as well, that doesn't help. There's only so far I can go in terms of the looks that I have, and it's a bitch in terms of the way that things go. But if you want to change that, then you've got to do it from the inside and look at exactly what people are doing, how they're casting, and how that works. And the same goes for your employment process. If you want it to change, then everybody has to be acknowledged and placed on an even keel. But then you also have to change the mindset of the people. Best Hope is a British villain, exactly, or a Arab terrorist. Quit downplaying yourself. You're awesome, man. I am awesome as a human being, but look-wise, there is no way in hell. Even though the fact that I've let my hair grow out and I'm being a bit shaggy today, there is no way in hell that I'm going to be getting one of those big Hollywood roles. But it's fine. But that's the thing, and I think in terms of the companies and how you work and their hiring practices, a lot of this affirmative action that happens right now is because of the fact that look, I'm not going to beat around the bush when it comes to this sort of things, but everybody's going to be sitting there going, you've got to say it. Some people are going to disagree with me, others aren't. There are certain kind of people who consider each other a safe zone. If you're maybe a Bond villain, I would love to be a Bond villain. I'd love to do something to James Bond. Not in that way. If you have a big, rich, white male hiring someone who's safe for a role, he's going to hire another white male because he's going to look at that and think that's safe. If you have a black male wanting to hire someone, he's going to try and hire another black male, dependent on whether or not he's in a safe area. And we hire based on who we feel safe with. Because I'm not a size 2 Barbie doll, I like Chinese food too much. I like Chinese food too, it's really nice. So you know what you're safe with. And for instance, if I walk down the street, I look kind of menacing, most women are going to look at me and think, rapist, okay? It happens. And especially when you're like walking home at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to probably sit there and think, and that's kind of the label that people are put on. And in order for us to take away these affirmative action policies that allow certain individuals of certain races and castes and genders and all that shit, then you've got to make everything equal and say, right, fuck the stereotypes. What can this person do? We've got criminal background checks. We've got all these other little bits and pieces going on. Who are we going to hire that is best for the job? Once you do that, then everything else falls into place. Then equality really does happen. Until that happens, government has to keep stepping in. And is it bullshit? Yes, it's fucking bullshit. I, for example, get a lot of white trash looks. Exactly. And that's kind of the problem. And I think people don't get this. It's like unanimously, we stereotype each other. We are kind of everyone's a little bit racist. To quote Avenue Q, everyone's a little bit racist sometimes. But doesn't mean we will be committing hate crimes, okay? And that's kind of the thing. And you've got to look at it that way. Like, I think what's the scariest part for me? Hey, I'm getting a big butt, my size is 7's tight on my butt right now. It might be exercise. I'm doing the yes. You can talk about your butt all you like, Tanya. Talk about it all the time. But it's the thing when it comes to individuals. We all have some form of racism because we have grown up in certain stereotypes. We've grown up with certain people. I'm living in a highly Cockney and kind of black community, so I've had some of those traits. I went to drama school, so I gained like more skills in terms of RP and English speaking, so I can talk like this most of the time, and have my stiff upper lip and my nose raised to show you people exactly what a true Englishman butts per exactly. And that's fine, but at the same time, there is existential classism. There's existential classism. There's a divide between rich and poor in terms of society. And there's also bias in terms of gender, there is bias in terms of race, and there is bias in terms of basically class itself, because people from poor communities don't get the same opportunities as people in rich communities. This happens a lot. It's happening a lot in the United States. It happens a lot here in the UK. And if you want to make things a lot more fairer and give a level playing field, then you have to literally go out there and say and be proactive about it. I go to Walmart and get racist. Oh God. Okay. So, oh God, I go to Walmart and get racist. I don't know what's wrong with my eyes today. Maybe I had tiredness. And that's the thing. And I've had, like, you know, and this whole stereotype thing about, oh, white people don't get racism because white people are white. So if someone sits there and calls you a honky, that's not racist. Yeah, fuck that opinion. I'm telling that right now. White people get as much racism as black people do, and as Hispanics do, and as Islamists and Muslims and all this and that, and Arabs. Everyone does get racist because we're all generally a little bit racist in terms of our own values. The only way we can change that is, you know, take it out of our community. If you're a black person and you sit there and call someone a honky, then you're generally racist against white people. I understand. And don't play the whole race card of my people were put down and all this. Change that. If you're basically a brown person and you're worried about people being Islamophobes, then that needs to change as well about how you interact with people. Show peace and love. But, you know, I'm ready to throw hands if someone basically tries to lay their hands on me, because that's me. You want to make things work. And in order for society to make things work and to take away these kind of positive racism, as I would call it, you need to break down these barriers. And you generally shouldn't be going around. And anybody who uses the N-word because someone is being racist to you, that doesn't justify you, okay? That's still racism. Even though it's like you didn't start the fight, you're kind of finishing it and making yourself look bad at the same time. So we have all these little parts and intricacies, and the fact that we all segregate each other as well. You know, I was saying about this, in the UK alone, we have certain sectors where people move there. You have Turkish people integrating with Turks because it's easier to speak with them, they can communicate with their own people, and they feel safe. You have Arabs in Arab kind of sects in London. Then you have, like, places like Soho, so you have Chinatown and all that stuff, where you have Chinese people with Chinese people. And the problem is there is no proactivity to kind of sit there and go, I'm in the United Kingdom, I need to learn English, I need to make sure that I understand their rules and go from there. And I think when it comes to people in general, we still have this in America as well. This is why I support open borders. I do too, Dewey. I support open borders because I believe everyone should live anywhere they want. But, you know, there is within reason. You have to look at to see if you can get a job, if you can basically work in the field that you want to work in, etc. I just find that in general, as people, we tend to not trust. We tend to not understand. And I think there's this huge level of ignorance around society in general that's led to stuff like Brexit, for instance. Brexit happened because you had people angry at the upper echelon, you know, basically the people at the top. They weren't happy. They were given a vote and a referendum to say, should we leave the EU or should we stay in the EU? Problem being is you have us sitting there, probably 89% of the people who voted, and this is just by my opinion, this isn't factual, they are very, very ignorant to the fact they didn't know what the EU was. They didn't know what Brexit was. They didn't know exactly who governed the Human Rights Act, which is our version of the Constitution. And basically in the rights that were governed under us. So they were sitting there going, well, once we're out of EU, we're out of their stranglehold, blah, 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 blah. That's ignorant. And I always say that is ignorant in terms of the way that was presented, because people were given lies and they digested those lies and then they made their choice based on said lies. And all you did was put us in a situation where now your friends and neighbours, who you didn't consider, right? George Jefferson got away with honky on TV forever. He did, but again, that's fine because you're using it in the sense of creativity and media. So you're highlighting a situation based on a TV show that's representing. I have no issue with that. I have no issue with people using that in art forms. I have no issue playing a terrorist in a TV show or a movie and then have someone call me a terrorist. Do you know what I mean? Or an Islamic cunt or whatever in a movie, because at the end of the day, I'm portraying a stereotype which is being enlightened by the medium in which I'm in, which means I'm educating at the same time. My character is educating in a sense. And that's kind of where the problem lies. You look at all these situations and you look at the focal points that people are made, and the fact that we led into a situation where people were thinking mostly with this. I think with this a lot, but a lot of people think with this, and they don't use this. You could literally go on the internet, and within 5 minutes, you could debunk the entire Brexit strategy. One, the fact that they were trying to give money to the NHS from the whole Brexit thing, which was a lie. Two, the way that it affects other people. Also, we have a sectarian neighbourhood stateside in my area. They're almost entirely German. And again, that's segregation. It makes no sense, you know. And that's kind of where the problem lies. We are segregating ourselves from each other. Even when we're living in a country where we want to live and we consider that country free, and we consider the opportunities there as opportunities that we want to partake, we segregate ourselves, and it doesn't work. Like the whole man versus woman thing right now. I find it kind of insulting when I have women sitting there calling all men intimidating and rapey and all this and that shit. I'm a perv. I've explained that I am a perv. In nature, I am a perv. I'm not going to go around asking everyone for nudes, but I am the kind of guy as if I look at someone and I have an attraction to them, I will literally look at that person and think, damn, you know, she hot, or damn, he hot. You know, I have no issue with that, as long as it's reciprocated. If it's not reciprocated, I'm a perv. I hit on everyone hits on Tonya, like everybody. I hit on Tonya. My cats hit on Tonya. But saying that, she is kind of smoking, so you know, I think her partner Justin, I just have to say, damn. But you've got all these like individuals that basically try to segregate themselves from another. You have women who are very alpha in their states. Pouts, but I'm hot too. You are hot too, Heather. Don't even go there. No problem with the perviness. You have those who basically sit there and go, well, I'm offended. I'm offended because you're objectifying her. Well, at the end of the day, it's reciprocated. She's perving at me. I've had women perv at my stuff, by the way. I've had women perv at me. Look at my when I was like weight training and stuff and looking at my abs and shit. I was being perved on. I had no issue with this. I was sitting there going, thank you. You know, it's really nice. Very nice for you to say. At the end of the day, the offence should be taken by me and me alone. If a woman has an issue with me, basically looking at her thinking, damn, she's fine, or saying hi, because I get this. I once had a situation where Pepsi, where a individual that I was talking to and saying hi, employees perv on me. Yeah, and it's fine. I don't find it an issue. There's creepy perving, which is I draw the line at, but there's, you know, the little mild perving is fine. But I've had an issue where the individual looked at me and went, "You're objectifying me," just because I said hello, right? I didn't look at her and go, "Oh yeah, you're fine, peace ass me." I just looked at her and say, "Hey, I'm suddenly objectifying her." Then we have an issue. I called a little child a cheeky monkey once, and because that, I never even looked at the kid's skin color, but because he was black, his mom took offense to it and said, "You said monkey." I was like, "It's cheeky monkey. It's a Cockney term. You can be as pervy as you want." You know, and that's agreed, Heather, and you should do it back. And I think that's where it comes to people, and everyone's offended of everything now. Sarkeesian is like the fucking pedestal of offense, even though she's one of the biggest hypocrites on the planet. I even consider Matt being, in this case, with the James Damore Google situation, I consider him to be a hypocrite. Because everyone has this little agenda that they want to keep pushing. People want to get famous now because it's literally what it is, right? Famous for being offended about something. And I'm basically now offended because you're offended. I have no fucking agenda. I don't really give a shit when it comes to people and their woes and all this and that shit. We've got bigger things to worry about. Trump's getting into a fight with North Korea. We could get nuked at some point. We could have World War III happening. That's, I think, should be a bigger focal point, where we've got a very loud and tanned human being wanting to do something and starting a fight with a very loud human being on the other side. Both egomaniacs wanting to start a fight without sitting there going, do you want this fight? You know, calmly talk, discuss. That could help both sides right now. And, you know, even though I will say, in his defense, I do agree that something needs to be done, I just disagree with the way he did it. Because in very Trump-like manner, he made threats and he was being very aggressive, which when someone's got a nuke and planes to do this, and the fact that they are militarizing these things, you don't really want to start a fight with them. Not right now, unless you want to continue that. It's like having an erection in front of someone and you're not considering having sex. It's gonna happen, as long as it's consensual. I'm gonna put that out there because I don't want people like go, Michael, you talked about rape, which I didn't. It's consensual. Anyway, and that's kind of the thing that lies here. I think the people get offended. We openly segregate ourselves, and we have issues where, as individuals, as people, we kind of like that divide. I don't want to be around Turks all day. I don't want to be around Arabs all day. I don't want to be around Londoners all day. They have capability to reach New York. I'm scared. I would be too. I feel really bad for you right this time. Even though this doesn't scare me from going to the States. I'm probably the only person who proactively still will try to basically get his 01 visa so that he can live in the United States. And a lot of it is the reason why I feel that I would do a lot better there in terms of my vocation and the way I want to do things. But in terms of this situation, in terms of anybody else, if you want to break down segregation, we need to openly welcome people, but we also need to set some guidelines, which for me would be learn English. If I go to France, right, and I want to live in France, I need to learn French. I'm going to end up in a situation where I'll probably starve to death because French people, they don't fuck with you unless you speak the language. I don't want to be around Southern Baptists all day. The ones who are like giving Satan an itchy sweater. Exactly. And that's kind of the big thing here. And I love, as I said, I love the French. I have no issue with the French. I don't like snooty French, but I have no issue in general with the French, especially French ladies, because I like the butts. But we've got that. And I will have to learn the language if I move to France. If I move to Canada, I've still got to learn kind of the way of the land, and I've got to learn the way that people work. Where any country you go to, you have to basically learn how they do things, what their rules are. You can't openly go to, say, somewhere like this one of these Arab countries where you're going to get arrested by having sex on the beach. They have laws. Doesn't matter if you think their laws are shit and you think that they are terrible human beings. You are openly going to their country and you've openly gone there to basically have a holiday. You have to adhere to their rules. You go to Spain, it's the same thing. You go to any other country, it's the same thing. If you're going to live somewhere, you need to learn their language, because if you don't, and they're not native English speakers, you are fucked. So when you're over here and you get people moving into this country, they segregate themselves. I've seen people who've lived in the United Kingdom for 12 years still not understand a word of English because they've not been around English people. And it creates that cultural divide because more people do the same thing. And I've seen it. You have Indian people with Indian people, Arabs with Arabs, Pakistani with Pakistani. It doesn't work because you're segregating yourself. And you're doing it. You know that you're doing it, that you're segregating. You know exactly why you're doing it. And you just need to take a step back and say, right, I'm going to proactively do this. If I want to become a British citizen, I have to become British. Same thing here with people. And agree. And if I want to become an American, I've got to be an American. I've got to learn everything. I've got to learn the American history. And that's kind of one of the things I do like about the States. In order for you to get citizenship, you need to make sure that you know American history. You understand the lay of the land. And that's a good thing. Then you have those who get kind of pigeonholed. You get segregation that's made because people are worried and afraid. I'm going to guarantee this. I would never, despite the colour of my skin, I would never hurt a fly. Most people know me, right? Only time I've ever been in physical altercations is if I'm basically forced into them. But I always try to diffuse things in my words. I articulate things very well. I'm very much an intelligent human being who likes to discuss things and talk. And I think open discussion is a great thing in terms of any forums. I'm not going to go running around holding a bomb in my backpack and try and blow myself up because I think I'm going to go and molest 100 virgins up in fucking Aladum or wherever the fuck it is. I'm agnostic as well. So I have no religious beliefs and no religious merits. One thing that bugs me, though, is when someone sits there and goes, "You're one of the good ones." That's open segregation and racism. You don't want to do that. I would rather go in there, get treated like a normal human being by someone, than get treated like a fucking stereotype. One of the things I hate are those equal opportunity forms. I hate them. When someone wants to know what my race is, when someone wants to know what my freaking gender is, who I sleep with, all this and that, so they can fill in a form, so they can put it in their figures to say what my people are doing, right? Oh, because these race, and it's kind of like it's segregative marketing in a sense, because they look at these sectors, they look at these people, and they find ways to see who's purchasing their products, and it's annoying as fuck. And I think once we get rid of that, once we get rid of like the segregation, once we get rid of people just basically using certain stereotypes, the good ones like normal people, exactly. No, I'm one of the good Arabs. I'm the non-terroristy type, even though I'm not Arab. It bugs me. And this is the thing, when it comes to each of us, the only way we're going to do it is if the left and the right come together and say, right, this needs to go. It's like I don't adhere to use of the N-word. Instead of using the N-word, I use Nathaniels. So, like, and I do it because I think it sounds posh and hilarious. And that's the way it should be. I think people who segregate one another, who end up stigmatizing and putting a negative stigma on others, you're part of the problem. And if you want these workplace policies to go, if you want people to stop hiring people based on their gender, or based on basically their colour of their skin, make it an even playing field. Stop sitting there looking at someone going, well, he's black, so obviously he must be from a bad neighbourhood, and obviously he may steal stuff. Here's a big one. This has actually made me laugh. I was watching The Daily Show recently, and they were talking about Donald Trump. And they said that Donald Trump is everything people thought Obama was going to be. Right? Donald Trump is actually the real black stereotype of what a president is. With our leaders right now, hate and name calling is the norm. Yeah, but think about it. He's basically, as they call the N-word president, and this is why. They said Obama was going to move his family into the White House, like his family and 50 kids, and give everyone jobs. Trump has done that, right? They said that Obama was going to eat buckets of chicken on the freaking Air Force One. Trump loves KFC. They also said that Obama was going to sit there and he wasn't very eloquent and he was going to be very loud and brash. Trump's all those things. So you can see where a negative stereotype plays out, but yet that stereotype is not existing in like a black person. Trump was very, Obama was very eloquent. Obama showed himself very well, carried himself very well. He was a showman, a very entertaining person. And despite how all of us feel about him, you could hate the guy, but you can sit there and say at least he was very eloquent and vigilant, and he could take a shot at himself. He liked to be mocked, you know? And that's kind of the problem when people assign stereotypes to somebody. Once you assign a stereotype, that sticks. And then the negativity continues. And if you want people to hire you based on your merits, you no longer, like all those degrees you have, all that education that you have, that intelligence that you have goes. And all you're seeing is a colour or a gender or a stereotype. And thus is the main problem. And if you want all that to go away, then you've got to be part of the conversation to say this needs to stop. Let's end hashtag let's end segregation. I'll start that movement. Hashtag let's end segregation. And the only way you can do that is by using positive reinforcement. When the black president is whiter than the son of a Klanman and a Scottish immigrant, exactly. And it's funny, Trevor Noah put it best when he's sitting there and he goes, this was a stereotype that everyone assigned to Barack Obama. And turns out Donald Trump is that guy. Now, I know I've got to talk about this a little bit because this is my platform and I have to do it. Congress are trying, there's a legislation Yeah, exactly. Would. By a rep called Olson, Pete Olson, and it's gone into the House Judiciary Committee. It's the H.R. 2796 Civil Rights Uniformity Act 2017, and I'm going to explain to you why this is a shitty, segregative system and why it doesn't work. And I'm hopefully it's going to be like thrown out. They may throw some amendments to it, but this is ignorance at its best, right? Now, it was introduced on the 6th of the 7th, 2017, and the bill prohibits the word sex or gender from being interpreted to mean gender identity and requires a man or a woman to be interpreted and refer exclusively to the person's genetic sex, or what you were born as, for the purpose of determining the meaning of federal civil rights laws and relative federal administrative agency regulation or guidance, which means basically the laws will only not as you are identified as. So if you're transgendered, you will be basically labeled as a male or a female pre-op before post-op, which is wrong. Okay? No federal civil rights law shall be interpreted to treat gender identity or transgender status as a protected class, unless it expressly designates gender identity or transgender status as a protected class. Now, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to ignorance and segregation. What he's single-handedly just done here is, one, he's made himself to be out like one of the biggest douchebags on the fucking planet by doing this. Two, he's also put into light on the fact that he is a fucking cunt. So I'm putting that out there. It's not nice what he's doing, and what this law, if it comes to pass, does is effectively it could mean transgendered human beings could be harmed. And say someone beats the living fuck out of you or creates a transphobic act, no longer are you protected by the law. So you can't sue them, or you can't have them arrested for violating transgender rights. So you are then no longer protected under the Constitution with that right. Specifically, your rights are governed under male or female. And the fact that we're in 2017 and this is the kind of thing that is so fucking ignorant, especially with someone who's supposed to be intelligent. When you get hired into a job such as like a congressman, I like, for me at least, I expect you to be based on your merits, not by how many people have a like-minded opinion to yours. And what's happened here is this has basically segregated a bunch of people and is basically just transphobic. It's nasty. No one, and not you, me, or anyone, has the motherfucking right to tell. It may pass, but it'll be repealed next year after the midterm elections if Scouters doesn't first. Yeah, but if it does, there's going to be a big lawsuit surrounding it. You should not use your own belief system as a way to hurt someone else. And this is where I have a problem. People are like, well, you're so left-wing, you're very SJW. I only get upset about shit when you're basically trying to hurt another person. That's it. The moment you do something to take away someone's rights, you're hurting them. You're basically making sure that they have a worse fucking time on this planet than you. And what gives you the motherfucking right to do that? You know? What makes you feel that you're so fucking entitled that you can't stand having someone who's transgendered around you or identified as such? This is what pisses me off about people, and especially those in political positions. When you're in political positions, you have no fucking opinion. You have nothing apart from what you're supposed to do to serve your constituents, your people. And that's every person, regardless of race, creed, colour, sexual preference, or identity. If someone wants to be an Apache helicopter, their rights should be covered, despite the fact that they're an Apache helicopter. I've seen people do weird fucking shit where you've got married couples pretending to be dad and daughter so they can relive some sexual fucking fantasy. That's fine. But the moment someone wants to basically have their rights protected because they don't feel that they are the person they want to be and need to change their sex to feel comfortable with their identity, who the fuck are you to decide? Trans in the bathrooms are pervs. Yeah, I've heard that argument, that whole trans bathroom shit. This, in all good intents and purposes, and for everybody out there, if you can, this is going to basically be going into consideration soon. Find your local congressman or congresswoman or congressperson. Let them know how you feel. Because this opinion is not only dangerous, but it's rather archaic. Very archaic. Because the fact is, you've got people who are being hindered and hurt based on someone's nasty little behavior. And I'm going to say this, you can't hide behind God, right? Don't sit there and use your fucking religion as a way to justify your actions. You are a horrible human being. That's first. I do not give a fuck about what your opinion is with transgender people. They have not done anything. They're not pedophiles. They haven't harassed anyone. They haven't fucked anyone. They haven't killed anyone. Judge the person based on their worth as a human being, not on their identity. A lot of friends have said, I prefer Pence as president because at least knows the game. No, I wouldn't. Mike Pence is a bigger bigot than Trump. You think that Pence would know what he's doing? Pence would destroy America. That's me. And that's the problem. By saying you want to identify as male or female, and that's what they should be governed by, or the laws should be governed by, then you know what? You're basically and effectively hurting someone and creating an environment that is toxic, you know, by Indiana, exactly. And that's the problem. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what you live by. I don't care what your value system is. But the moment you try to justify the hate and hurt and harm that someone else gains because you don't agree with their fucking choices in life, then you are part of the problem. It's the same with me. I'd be part of the problem. You can't do shit like this. And I do agree with some of the arguments on the right where they're like, well, this is happening and we're afraid of this. Then if you're afraid of pedophiles manipulating the laws, then you make sure that those laws are in place to protect from pedophilia. And no offense, and this is the funny thing, and I think Chris from Review Tech said it best, and I laughed at this. Are you really going to get a $30,000 operation to get your wiener cut off so you can molest kids? Like, really? Is that going to be a thing? You know, and it's just mind-boggling how people who are so intelligent, and I consider everybody that I know and everyone that even reads something and researches to be intelligent, and you know, regardless of faith, regardless on inability to process, but there is a thing that people need to understand. If you're Christian, you have Christian values. Jesus, basically, what you doing to my wiener? Ha! Hey, Sean. I was like, what? Jesus had a situation in the Bible where it says that he hung around thieves, prostitutes, basically the disenfranchised, people who were considered scum to others, right? Who were considered not worthy of his love, and he loved them anyway. Why can't people love anyway? Regardless if you're religious or if you're non-religious, why can't you? And that's the kind of the problem here, isn't it? It's the biggest thing that you look at it and you think about laws like this. Segregation is a big thing, whether it be classism, gender-based segregation, it's race-based segregation, or if it's segregation based on the trans community or the LGBT community in general. In order for us to take away and destigmatize the kind of the hate and get rid of it, we need to make sure that this hate doesn't exist anymore, that laws are in place to protect people. Human beings, like you, like me, like Sean, like anybody out there. And that's where I kind of want to leave it at, you know, and it's, man, where did it become so cool to hate openly on someone else? thieves and whores, eh? Maybe I should give him another chance. Yeah, it's literally go in the Bible, read the fucking passage. The man hung around thieves and whores because he believed that everybody was the same. There were still his followers, there were still his children, per se, because he believed in them. And that's where, you know, this whole thing is, if you believe, if you don't agree, you don't have to agree with a trans person's choices. You don't have to agree with a gay person's choices. You don't have to agree with anyone's choices, right? As long as they are not hurting anyone else or harming anyone else, then why the fuck do you even get involved in their life? It's like people sit there and go, well, I'm in control of my life and you need to stop and stay out of my life. Then why are you interfering in the life of someone you know nothing about? It could be your next door neighbor, it could be your school teacher, it could be your best friend, it could be your child. I know for a fact that one day I'm going to have to deal with certain issues when it comes to my children. Whether it be mental issues or whether it be issues on stuff like sexuality, I'm going to have that conversation, right? And that's kind of the conversation that needs to be had as a parent. By dismissing these things and being ignorant to them and not understanding where the other individual is coming from, you effectively take away any point of conversation. And if that happens and your niece, your nephew, your child ends up in a scenario where they feel ashamed of themselves because they're gay and they know that mummy and daddy openly hates that, where does that leave you as a parent? Because you're effectively allowing your child to feel that they mean nothing to you because of a feeling they have and because of the way they are around someone else. Acceptance and understanding is the key to anything. And I think once we get away from all that bullshit and negative connotations from people who sit there and say, I hide behind my religion, because that's effectively what you're doing. And we put our politicians in check and say, you cannot do this. Your belief system has no bearing on the way that our society is governed. We are free thinkers, and we are a society that grows. It's an ever-growing trend. We evolve as human beings, and we understand. And that's where our governments need to actually be at. And the moment you focus on toilet debates, or you try to identify someone as male or female, and you govern that that's how the law should be governed in regards to their context, that moment you do that is the moment you're allowing hate, like what Hitler did with the Jews, like what basically happens with these countries in Sharia law, where they're openly stoning women who are being raped. You cannot allow that same mentality to wash over societies that are supposed to be more understanding. I'm going to be joining a monastery because fuck, I need peace and love. Exactly. I need peace and love. I think I need to join an orgy, to tell you the truth, because that should give me peace and love. And that's where I should leave it at. I love you guys. I thank everybody who's been on this live stream. You've listened to me ramble for over an hour. 5 people have listened to me ramble over. I consider this a success. Thanks, Dewey. Thank you, Pixel Pixie. Heather. Thank you, Tanya, for telling us about that gorgeous ass of yours. Thank you, Sean, for joining us as well. And everybody else who's joined us on the stream, because I know there's a lot more of you. And just to understand, like, I will leave you with this takeaway, this little takeaway, which is this. Do you feel that your beliefs, that things that you don't like, should be the general consensus? And if so, why? Because if that's the case, I think we should outlaw gherkins, because I hate gherkins, or we should outlaw basically people who spit on the floor, or we should outlaw all these other stuff I don't like, because then eventually when that happens, it becomes a totalitarian society where you're basically in the same position as Kim Jong-un, who sits there and says, I don't like something, so I'm going to basically put some laws in place that harm each and every other person. You don't have to like something, you know. You don't have to like an individual. Yeah, no worries, Dewey. It means a lot that you came. I mean, to the stream, not actually like jizzed your pants. So, you know, you want a free and just society, you want the freedoms and rights, and you want to be free to speak your mind, then think about exactly who you're hurting by allowing people to enforce that opinion and turn it into law. Because it makes you no better than the dictators you say you're fighting against. Because America equals freedom, right? That's pretty much it. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I have a Patreon. If you want to donate to this Patreon, it's patreon.com/Enigma Entertainment. This Patreon is used for acting projects and stuff where I can basically, I'm going to be directing a short movie. Any contribution goes towards the actors and everybody who works on the project. It doesn't go in my pocket. So there you go. Who says I didn't, you sexy beast? Oh, thank you, man. I look a mess. Look at this. This is just ridiculous. I need to shave. I had to literally buy a new plug for my razor because, you know, too much hair. But go for that. Patreon.com Enigma Entertainment. The link will be in the doohickey here. Make sure you check out all my other videos. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. 610 subscribers. I'm fucking amazed by you people. I love you all. Thank you. If you want me to discuss another opinion or discuss anything that we stated here, or anything else, any news stories that come up, let me know. As always, leave a comment below and let me know your opinion, because your opinions are just as valid as mine. Otherwise, I'm some idiot talking to himself. And thank you for everyone that's participated in this live stream. I shall see you again soon. And this has been Michael Bearhan saying that I got gameplay. Have you? See you later, folks.